This week's Torah portion is going to, in the eyes of Leib, are going to unveil a fundamental secret to marital success that we prove from and see from our very own patriarch Jacob and his relationship with his wives, and specifically one of them, as we're soon going to see. Tonight's lesson may be one of the most important lessons any couple, specifically young couples, which are trying to bring new life into this world, may ever hear. And with that introduction, let's start. The Torah speaks to us this week about a very unfortunate event. This event can be read at great length, and please feel free over the weekend and Shabbat to read this chapter of this week's Torah portion. It's chapter 34. Chapter 34 in this week's Torah portion tells us about the unfortunate event of Dinah, Leah's seventh child, her only daughter, at least the way it is shown in the scripture, in the books, in our Chumash, 6 sons, and then she had a daughter, Leah, Dinah. Dinah goes out to socialize, to meet people. Unfortunately, an evil eye was set upon her. And I don't take that literally, but a very evil person set his eyes on her. And this was Shem ben Chamor. Loosely translated, Shem, son of a donkey. And he sees this girl, and he wanted her. He desired her. And he took her, and he violated her. Horrible, horrible, horrible. Dinah comes, she doesn't come home, sorry. She's still by Shem. And unfortunately, Jacob's sons, Dinah's brothers, hear of the horrible event that took place. That their very own sister was violated in a horrible way by a prince of a nearby city, Shem. And they decided they have to take revenge. Shimon and Levi go and approach Chamor, the king of Shem, for what Shem, the son, did. Right? Shem was his son's name, but it was also the name of the city. And Chamor says, what do you want? My son loves her, wants to be with her, continue to be with her, build a family with her. Let's do a deal. I'll give you my daughters, you give us your daughters. Let's make a pact. So they answer, unfortunately, we cannot, because you are impure, because you are uncircumcised. And until you are circumcised, you are deemed impure, and we cannot commingle our pure nation, our pure family, with yours. They say, no problem. Let us circumcise ourselves, and then let's join forces. Shimon and Levi cunningly say, let's do it. Circumcise all the men, and then we have a deal. On the third day, I'm going to show you the verse. Very, very strong verse. This is in chapter 34, verse 25, as you can see on your screen. It says, Vayhi bayom hashlishi biotam koavim. So Levi and Shimon, they waited till the third day. On the third day of a surgery is the most painful day of recovery. And on the third day, they were in tremendous amount of pain. All the men of the city of Shem. Vaikhu shnei bnei Yaakov, Shimon veLevi. And then the two children of Yaakov, Shimon and Levi, who were the brothers of Dinah, Achei Dinah. Ish charbo, they each drew their own sword. Vayavo ala'ir betach ve'argu kol zachar. They came upon the city with confidence, and they slew every single male. They killed them all. They did this because of what they did to their sister. And Jacob was so not happy about this. Extremely, extremely not happy, did not approve of this, not from the beginning and not afterwards, and we're soon going to see even at his very own deathbed. He admonishes them for this. So this story takes place when after Jacob confronts his brother Esav, and he's on his way home. Now, there's a difference of opinion how old these boys were. They were brothers. They were full brothers. They were brothers from their father Jacob, obviously, and their mother was Leah, Shimon and Levi. The Midrash actually says these two boys just turned bar mitzvah. Shimon was 13, almost turning 14, and Levi was already 13. They were just in their bar mitzvah year. Rabbeinu Bechaya has a different calculation, and he says, no, Levi was really 12 years old and 9 months, 12 years and 9 months old. So he was almost 13. Regardless, they were very young, and they did something which Jacob absolutely did not approve of. So here's Reb Leib's question. Bomb question, all right? Since the birth of these two sons, Shimon and Levi, the Torah mentions absolutely nada, zilch, about them. The first 13 years of their life, nothing. Oh, you know, the first episode that they're mentioned in is about their massacre and murdering an entire city, at least the males of an entire city. What's so puzzling about this is because there's a principle in our Torah that the first time something or someone is mentioned explains us a lot about their essence, about their character, and about what we are supposed to, what type of lens we're supposed to view them in for the rest of the Torah. So his first issue is, how can this be? What type of essence are we portraying for these two sons of Jacob, Shimon and Levi, Jacob's second and third son? Furthermore, when we compare these two brothers to themselves, they're compared in a very different light. However, they did the same thing. Levi is outstanding. He's prominent. Shimon not. Shimon is looked more in a negative light. What's the difference? They both did the exact same thing. So, continues Reb Leib to develop this, to show us the true greatness of Levi and the tribe of Levi, from the very beginning of the second book in our Torah, from the beginning of Exodus, continuing all the way through Leviticus, and Numbers, and Deuteronomy. For 4 out of 5 in completion of our books, the tribe of Levi, the family of Levi, is the focal point. It starts with Levi's own grandson, Amram, who marries Levi's daughter, Yocheved. And then they have 3 kids. And these 3 biblical characters are the focal point of the entire rest of our Torah. And they're raised to the greatest heights. Moses, the greatest prophet, went up to heaven. He knew and spoke to God like we speak face to face to someone, the only one. Aaron, the Kohen Gadol, the high priest, father of all Kohanim, equal in greatness to Moses. And Miriam, one of the 7 prophetesses. In her merit, the Jewish people had a well for the 40 years while they were traveling. Reb Leib continues and says, all 3 of them died by a kiss of death directly by God. And they were part of a very small and unique group, being Miriam the only woman of this group of 7 bodies who has not and will never have worms and maggots after they are buried. It's our 3 patriarchs, Abraham, Yitzhak, Yaakov. Then it's Aaron, Miriam, and Moses, and Benjamin. These are the only 7 biblical characters, or anyone for that matter, to never have any amount of worms or maggots after they are put into the ground. Reb Leib says all this merit stems from their parents, Amram and Yocheved, and from Levi, their great-grandfather. Also, just in case we haven't mentioned enough greatness about the tribe of Levi, the tribe of Levi were the only ones to not stop circumcising their sons in Egypt. Every other tribe stopped. The Midrash actually tells us that the tribes came to each other and says, "Let us be like the Egyptians and stop circumcising our boys." And the tribe of Levi was the only one who did not want to assimilate. And they stuck strong with it. They were the only ones, and Reb Leib says there's a connection, that they were the only ones who did not serve the golden calf. Reb Leib says it's because they circumcised themselves that not one of them ever served the golden calf. How do we know? He proves. Check in Exodus chapter 32, verse 26. It says that Moses gets up in the gate of the camp and he says, "Mila Shem Elai, who is for the Lord? Come with me." What does it say? I have it in bold here. Vayeasefu elav kol bnei Levi. And all of the sons of Levi gather around him. All, explains Reb Leib, there was not one descendant of Levi who served the golden calf. Having said this, if we look at the tribe of Levi, they had a very special blessing by Moses at the end of his life, which refers to them as the most pious of all of our tribes. And until this very day, only Jews who are descendants from the tribe of Levi know that. Meaning, if you're a Cohen or you're a Levi, you know that you're a direct descendant of the tribe of Levi. But all the rest of us, we don't know. Are we from Judah's tribe, from Benjamin's tribe? Joseph? We don't know. Only Jews that are part of the tribe of Levi know that they're part of the tribe of Levi. And we don't know which tribe we're from. That's how great Levi was. So now what's the source? Reb Leib wants to know. What's the source? It's evident that Levi has an amazing and extremely lofty and holy source. But why? What is the source of his loftiness and his greatness? So Reb Leib says, why is there no mention of any of this greatness in the book of Genesis at all? The book of Genesis, Nachmanides explains, is Sefer Yetzirah. It's the book of creation. This loftiness and holiness that Levi had should be apparent in the book of creation, where he himself was born. So our sages explain us, Reb Leib tells us, that Levi's holiness was evident from the way he was named, and it truly was mentioned in the book of Exodus. How so? If we take a look, last week's Torah portion, when all the tribes were born, every single tribe, every child, let's put it that way, was named by their mother. It was each tribe, the mother named the baby. It wasn't the father. Jacob didn't name the babies. It was Rachel that named her child Joseph. It was Leah that named her children. It was Bilhah and Zilpah that named her children. With the exception of Benjamin, because Rachel passed away during childbirth, and then Jacob had to name Benjamin. But with the exclusion of Benjamin, every other tribe was named by the mother, except for one, Levi. Levi was named by God. How do we know this? Look at the verse. Chapter 29, verse 34. It says, Vatahar od vateled ben. Vatomer. So now she gets pregnant, Leah, for the third time, and she says, Ata hapam. Now this time, yilave ishi elai. That my husband will come and be attached to me. Ki aladti lo shlosha banim. I finally gave him 3 boys. Now look what it says here. Al ken kara shemo Levi. And therefore, he was named Levi. Who named him Levi? Explains our commentaries. God named him Levi. He was the only one of the tribes that was named by God. Every other tribe was named by their mother, with the exception of Benjamin, was named by his father. Why is that so? Well, Rashi tells us that Levi was named Levi, which means to be accompanied, to come closer to be connected to. He actually came with 24 gifts. When he was born, he was brought with the 24 gifts that the Kohanim will eventually receive. Now, what does that mean? Reb Leib says, how can a baby merits something they don't deserve. His terminology is, how could someone merit something without lifting a finger even? The baby was just born. What does that mean? He was born with gifts. How could that be? He says that Levi's greatness must stem from Genesis, and the source is always the following. That greatness is not simply a result of a heavenly gift. Rather, it's a reward from one's actions. Before Levi was born, now this is the bomb, so hold on strong. Before Levi was born, Leah, after all, Jacob's first wife, maybe not his preferred wife, but his first wife. Before Levi was born, that means before she had Reuven, after she had Reuven, and before and after she had Shimon. During that entire time period, Leah felt rejected and far from her husband Jacob. She felt a lack of connection. She felt hated. The proof is, look at the name she names her second son. Chapter 29, verse 33, it says, Vatahar od, this is her second son. Vateled ben, and she has a son. Vatomer, and you know what she says? Ki shama Hashem, ki sinu anochi. The Lord has heard that I am hated. Vaiten li gam et zeh. Nevertheless, he still gave me this one. Vatikra shemo Shimon, and she calls the child Shimon. Reb Leib says, why is he called Shimon? It's in bold, it's highlighted. She called her son Shimon because she felt hated by her husband. Reb Leib says, what a horrible feeling. Do you know how hated you have to feel, how distant you have to feel from your husband to name your son hatred? It's horrible. Absolutely. However, look at the dichotomy between the second son's naming and the third son. By the third son, Reb Leib says, her mood completely changed. 360 degrees. You know what she calls her third son? We saw this verse a moment ago. This is chapter 29, the verse 34. She says, Ata hapam, now yilavei shi elai. Now, this time my husband will be attached to me. And I'm going to call my son Levi, which means to be accompanied, to be attached. What happened? Did something change? Must have been. Reb Leib says something drastically changed. The word Levi denotes attachment, joining, feeling close, the feeling of being united through one's soul. She no longer felt distant and rejected from her husband. She felt close and loved by Jacob. Reb Leib says there's no doubt something changed in their relationship. Something big happened. And he says, you know what it was? Like every relationship. Now, I know we have men and women on this class. And normally when, whether it's rabbis or rebbitzins, coach women, when it comes to marital peace, we always tell the woman, you know, it's up to you to put the work into it. If you give, if you do for him, he'll do back. And similarly, when we coach the men, we always say, if you give her, if you do for her, she'll do back for you, she'll reciprocate. That's the obvious, common sense of coaching for marital peace. However, the facts are, and the truth is, that a marriage is completely, the success of a marriage is completely dependent on the husband. The husband is the sun, and the woman is the moon. And the woman, being the moon, can only shine based on the sun's light, the light that the husband sheds on her. The warmth that he provides her is the only thing that she can reciprocate. Now, Jacob, even though he had all the reasons in the world to dislike Leah. After being tricked by her, oh, that she's coming down the aisle, it's Rachel. It's not Rachel, it's Leah. He saw, nevertheless, how hurt his wife was. And he saw this only after, it was only so clear to him after she named her second son Hatred, Shimon. After that happened, Reb Leib says he started loving her. He completely uprooted all of the hatred that he had for her, the dislike, and he loved her. And he drew closer to her. And he built a relationship with her. To the point that within less than a year, the next son she names him based on companionship, on feeling close to her husband. This is, Reb Leib says, a foundational secret. That the closer the relationship between a husband and wife, the greater the children who are born are going to be. The results of a close and loving and warm relationship are pure, holy, lofty, and godly committed children. This, explains Reb Leib, is the roots of Levi's greatness and everything to follow, and all his great descendants to follow. Now, the truth is, Reb Leib tells us that Levi was tithed. Tithed, like taking off 10%. Levi was tithed by Jacob to God. How so? He proves this from the Rambam. The Rambam tells us, Maimonides tells us, that Jacob taught Levi the most Torah out of all of his children. Let's put Joseph in a box and speak about him later. Reb Leib does address him a little later. But of all of Jacob's children, Levi learned the most amount of Torah directly from Jacob. And therefore, Jacob even nominated him as the leader on top of the rest of his brothers and the educator to teach all of them Torah. And there's a story in the Midrash of a heretic who comes to Rabbi Meir at the time of the Talmud and tells him, well, was Levi taken really as 10%? Was he tithe taken off as maaser? That can't be. If there's 12 tribes, one of 12 is not 10%. So there was not a proper tithing taken place. So Rabbi Meir answers him back and he says, no, truth is there's 14 tribes. There's 14 to take from. Because the Torah itself says that Jacob told Joseph that your two children, Ephraim and Menashe, Kireuven v'Shimon Yuli, are like my own two children. He adopted them. So Jacob had 14 sons. So the heretic says, even better. 1 out of 14 is not 10%. So listen to a beautiful interpretation that Reb Meir tells him. He says, how many wives did Yaakov had? 4 wives. Each of the wives had a firstborn. So the Bechor, the firstborn, is automatically consecrated to God. So 14 children minus 4 gives us 10. Out of those 10, one of them, Levi, who was not a firstborn, was tithed. Beautiful concept, no? We see that Levi was the greatest in Torah. Jacob set him aside for this task. And now comes the great question. We always speak of Joseph as being the greatest son. The son that had divine prophecy, divine intervention, Ruach HaKodesh, as we say in Hebrew. He was the completion of Jacob, culmination of Jacob's most wanted relationship, of his most beloved wife, Rachel. Why is it now that we see that almost we're playing up Levi way more than Joseph? Fascinating answer that Reb Leib says. He says Joseph's greatness and virtues were only for him and for that time. You see, Joseph ruled in Egypt as viceroy for 80 years. Never heard of. I think the Queen of England today is approaching that number of 80 years of reign, or she passed it, or she's about to pass it. But to be a viceroy over the most powerful country in the world for 80 years is short of no power or success at all. But Reb Leib says that that power and that success, that greatness and that virtue only stuck with Joseph and was not passed on to any of his children. His rulership, his reign ended with his passing. However, Levi's greatness endured forever. It was for himself and for his rest of his descendants. And the truth is, Reb Leib says that he himself was not greater than Joseph. If you put Joseph and Levi on a scale, Joseph wins. But look at the future. Levi's greatness endured forevermore until Mashiach will come. It's because he inherited great powers from his mother Leah, which was greater than Joseph's mother Rachel. See the situation that Leah was put in and how she was able to have it turned around for her was something so great that she merited to have 6 out of the 12 tribes come from her. So Levi's greatness is so amazing, yet it's so hidden in our Torah. It's only hidden to in the book of Genesis. And why is that? It's hidden to based on the name that his mother names him. Why can't it be more apparent? Oh, yes, from Exodus and on it's apparent, but not from the book of Genesis. Reb Leib gives 2 answers, 2 quick answers. First is based on Rabbeinu Bechaye, one of the great commentaries on our Torah, that says, and I quote, "The more hidden or obscure something is, the more hidden and brief it will be." Meaning that anything which has a tremendous amount of power and loftiness and purity to it is always hidden and brief. As we see, one of the greatest concepts and one of the 13 principles that we have is that there is Olam Haba, there is a world to come. Do you know that there is no mention in our entire Torah from beginning to end of Olam Haba, the world to come? Why is that? Reb Leib says, because the world to come is something so pure, so holy, and it has to be hidden. Similarly to the way that Levi's greatness was hidden. Second answer Reb Leib gives is based on the Zohar that says all matters of Leah were all done in a hidden way because she was brought to Jacob in a covered and hidden way, right? She had a veil on. And that's why, traditionally, the Kala does come down with a veil, but it's lifted by the ceremony in order that we see and we make sure that that is the bride. Yaakov and Leah explains Reb Leib, Yaakov and Leah's relationship was always concealed. He never slept in her tent. Even after Rachel died, he didn't go to her tent. He went to Bilhah's tent, Rachel's maidservant's tent. Leah was buried in a cave, Merat HaMachpelah, somewhere hidden. You know where Rachel was buried? Out on the roadside, so that all would come and see her and pray to her. Pray to God on her behalf. So the greatness of her kids, Levi, specifically here, was also concealed. So now let's go back to the story of Dinah and what Shimon and Levi did. After all the greatness that we're speaking about Levi, how is it possible he was able to disobey his father and kill Shechem and the entire city with Shimon? How is it possible that Levi wanted to murder his own brother Joseph, his father's favorite son? If he's so great, how can he do that? How could he want to do that? Fascinating answer Reb Leib says is based on the Talmud that tells us, don't condemn a young scholar, a Talmid Chacham, for becoming angry. Because we have to understand that he's only getting angry. He can't control his anger due to his youth, due to his youthfulness. And the only reason why he may be getting angry is because the fire of Torah is burning with him and he does not know how to control it yet because he's young. Right? He's 13 years old. Reb Leib says, we know that anytime Jacob and Isaac learned Torah, they were engulfed with fire. This 13-year-old boy, the two of them, Shimon and Levi, they learned a lot of Torah. It was burning in them. They couldn't control their anger, so to say. Don't hold it against them. All they wanted to do is seek revenge for what was done to their poor sister, Dinah. They only wanted to bring justice to Joseph with his ridiculous allegations, according to them. These two boys took things into their own hands. They cared about these matters so seriously. They cared more than the rest of the brothers. They are referred to as the most zealous of our brothers. Of our tribes, of the brothers. Shimon and Levi, the most zealous. So how is it that they're so different? They both did the exact same thing out of zealousness. They both wanted to murder Joseph. They both ended up murdering the entire city of Shechem. Yet one is portrayed one way and the other another way. What's the difference between the two? Furthermore, look at their descendants. Do you know who the descendant of Levi was? Pinchas, ben Elazar, ben Aaron HaKohen. He restored Hashem's wrath for the Jewish people. Further on, coming up, we're about to celebrate it in a little over a week. The Hashmonaim, which were all descendants of the tribe of Levi. They're all Kohanim. They defeated the Greeks during the Second Temple era. All descendants of Levi. Zealousness. You want to know on Shimon's side? Shimon's descendants was Zimri ben Salu, who was the prince of the tribe of Shimon, who rebelled against God and Moses, to which Pinchas had to come and murder. How come? Why are they so different if they did the exact same thing? So their difference is so apparent that even Jacob recognized their difference. Jacob, on his deathbed, he didn't bless Shimon and Levi. Rather, he tells them, you should both be split and scattered amongst the rest of our nation. He didn't want them to join forces and, God forbid, cause another catastrophe or calamity. He wanted to keep them separate. Just as Joseph did when they came down, when all of his brothers came down to Egypt to retrieve food, he right away incarcerated Shimon to separate Shimon from Levi. Because he knew that the two of them together were like a nuclear bomb. No one could hold back from them. No one could beat them. But again, why the difference? They did the same thing. Both Shimon and Levi. The answer is, as Leib says, can be found in a person's name. You see, a person's name is absolutely instructive regarding the person's very essence and character. There's so much to be said about a name that a person is given and a person carries. Shimon's name was rooted in hatred. That's why he was named. His name was hatred. He was completely different than Levi. What was Levi's name rooted in? It means faithfulness, companionship, dedication. He was involved in confronting Shem and Yosef, but for a completely different reason than Shimon. Shimon's reason was hatred. That's what he was. That was his essence. Levi was coming from a different place. He was coming from a place of mercy, faithfulness, being faithful to his brother Shimon and to his other brothers and to his sister, and going against the treacherous Yosef, who was having ridiculous allegations against them. That's why he went and did what he did. To seek vengeance for his sister Dinah, not out of anger, out of love, compassion, commitment, dedication. This is why Joseph jailed him and not Levi. He jailed Shimon because Shimon was the one that was out of anger. He wanted to stop that hatred and that anger, while the other was just full of dedication and faithfulness. And this is why Hashem said they warned them to be separate. They had to separate because God did not want Shimon's bad influence to rub off onto Levi. Not the anger and not the hatred. We see that even the descendants of Levi, look at Aaron. Aaron loved his brother. He was completely dedicated to his brother. Because that's what Levi means. That's what Levi was born because of. So this is the end of Reb Leib, and I want to share 2 lessons. I'm sure Reb Leib would agree to these based on his amazing novelty. The first is the power of being united as a couple and what type of product that creates. When a husband and wife are united, they create a sense of closeness, belovedness, companionship, faithfulness between one another. The product is holy, is lofty, is pious, is God-fearing, is set for the most amazing things. As we see that because Jacob was sensitive to his wife and he started coming closer to her, look what came out of that. The holiest child out of all of them. The most long-lasting, everlasting in holiness. Levi came out of him bringing his wife closer. We can all do the same in our own level. We can all bring our spouse closer to ourselves, more into our life, confide in them, share and spare quality time with them, and grow together and close, because that is what will bring not only an amazing relationship between us and our spouse, but it will bring the greatest, the purest of children into this world. And the second lesson I want to pay attention to is that we always have to make sure that we come from a place of dedication and commitment, and that our motives have nothing to do with anger or hatred towards someone else. Even when we have to sometimes express tough love, it's coming out of love, dedication, commitment to the other. These are the 2 lessons I wanted to bring out. Again, the one is the power of the unity of a couple and how strong Jacob was to overcome his dislike for his wife and bring her closer. Sometimes in life, our spouse may say something or do something to us which pushes us away from them. We have to learn from Jacob and overcome that. We'll deal with it, overcome it, and bring our spouse closer. And the second is to always make sure that when we do everything, it's always coming from a place of love, commitment, dedication, faithfulness to the other, and chas v'shalom, God forbid, not from a place of hatred or anger in any way. With this, I am welcoming anyone to join in for a question. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Really a pleasure. All right, we spoke about a lot, and I got it all in 1 hour. This is 60 minutes. Like the news channel, right? Go. Lahavdil elef havdalot.
Kol hakavod, Rabbi, that was unbelievable. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mom. Thank you.
Every year we learn more and more. You're true to your name, Yaakov.
That's right.
Yoshev Be'ohalim, Lomed Torah. I'm very proud of you.
Thank you, Mom. Love you. Thank you.
Thank you. Love you.
Well, that was what a way. Can't follow that up.
Yeah, to the point where I just want to have another son just to name him Levi, right?
We just all agree. You have to have Levi's and
Joseph's.
And Joseph's, and we agree with Mom. That was quite beautiful, Siggy.
Thank you.
What a great class. I didn't know all that about Levi.
I tell you the truth, neither did I. Neither did I until this week.
Do we say Levi or Levi?
Levi.
Levi.
The different pronunciations. According to the Ashkenaz pronunciation, it's Levi. According to the Sephardic pronunciation, it's Levi.
Levi. Okay, Levi. Okay, good to know. You know, it's interesting. My dad was a Levi. So.
Your dad was a Levi?
Yes, he was.
Wow, look at that. Okay.
So on my mom's yard side, it was very nice that you should talk about that. It was very special. Thank you for a beautiful class.
Thank you.
I know they're smiling in all sorts of ways. So very special.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us. It's a pleasure. Open this week's Torah portion over Shabbat. Pull out the Stone Edition. I love the Stone Edition. There's great footnotes over there, and read some of the notes and learn this week's Parsha. It is filled with gems, and hopefully, if you can remember what we spoke about, the first part about Jacob vanquishing the angel, and the second part about the dichotomy between Levi and Shimon and what that means to us in our marriages specifically, that would be absolutely great. Eileen, question.
One thing. I just want to welcome our friend Larry Zeifman from Toronto.
Welcome, fellow Canadian. I'm from Montreal.
So the Canadians are coming on strong. He's a
Pleasure
very
to be here.
dear friend of ours for at least 30 years. So we're excited he joined us tonight.
Your mother's neshama should have an aliyah.
Amen. Amen.
You're the best, Larry. Thank you.
L'chaim.
L'chaim. L'chaim.
See, Ron and I were having a l'chaim in the middle. Oh,
Yeah,
so
you were.
you too, Eileen? Okay.
Well, a little.
Shkoyach, Rabbi Loretta.
Thank you, Shkoyach. I want to make a mention to the Chassan Kala, the bride and groom who are on with us. I see David Friedman. Big Mazel Tov. And we're so happy that you're joining us for tonight's class in memory of your grandmother, David.
Mazel tov to the new couple.
Thank you.
Lots of nachas to the parents.
Thank you.
Everyone. And more smachot bar Yifat.
Amen.
I got a question over here in the chat.
Okay. Who is Larry?
Yes, so Shimon did something good because he stood up for Dinah, but he stood up from a place of anger and hatred, opposed to how we explained Levi did. Next is, so it's up to the husband what type of marriage what type of closeness a marriage will have, as we see by Yaakov Avinu. Yes, let me reiterate. The closeness and the success of a marriage is dependent on the husband's efforts. It's dependent, obviously, on both. It's a two-way street. But the individual in the driver's seat when it comes to marital peace, marital bliss, is the husband. Now, that may be a good thing. That may not be a good thing. If you have an unmotivated husband or just a mean, brute type of a person, well, then you may have to be a very vocal backseat driver. But if not, it's basically to show the responsibility, and the most efforts need to be put in on the husband's end, and then the wife will automatically reciprocate. I'm not saying that sometimes it's too late and that there's certain marriages that have to be ended and divorce, but if it waits too late and there's way too much damage. Mrs. Friedman has a question.
Hi, good evening, Rabbi. Good evening, everybody. So are you saying that the root of the name Shimon is rooted in hatred? So you're saying everybody whose name Shimon comes from that? Is that something?
I don't know if you have any Shimons in your family, so I don't know
I
what
do. My son is Shimon Akiva, but I named him after Rabbi
Okay,
Shimon
good.
Bar
So
Yochai.
at least he has another name. He has another name too. So that's fine.
But I named him after Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. So I guess my point would be, is that rooted in not only that, like, and no offense to anybody, but I always thought the name Miriam, like bitter waters. People are naming somebody bitter waters. I always thought it was a little bit strange that people would name their daughter bitter waters. So now I'm like rethinking all this now.
Okay, so I want to say a couple things. Number one is there is a lot of what's the word I'm looking for? There is a lot that is passed down based on the type of name you give a child and also who specifically you're naming them after.
Okay.
When it comes to Shimon, I think the aspect of the hatred and anger that Shimon had was, I don't want to say it was limited to him, but it was most profound by him, because that was his creation and that was the reason of his creation, and the name his mother gave for a certain reason.
Right.
So could there be a trace of that in every other Shimon to follow? Could be, yes, but not as severe as the original Shimon. You understand what I mean?
Okay.
And also, let's face it, at the end of the day, Shimon was a very righteous individual. He was one of the 12 tribes. So going to the name Miriam, Miriam does mean bitter, yes, but it's still naming after a very prominent prophetess,
Right.
an amazing biblical character. I never would suggest anyone to not name after Miriam.
Okay.
And if wanted to add another name along with it, that may be fine also.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, thank you everyone. Have an amazing evening, a great evening. Good to see everyone. Have a Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat
remember-
shalom. Thank you.
Remember, you husbands, remember us husbands. We're in the driver's seat. All the responsibilities on us for home, peace in the home. All right. Bye, everyone.